The sun had just started to set when Elena Cruz stood quietly by the entrance of the Orchards, a high-end private community nestled in the hills. Dressed in oversized layers, her face shadowed beneath the rim of a tattered hoodie, she looked every bit the part she needed to play. A woman with nothing. But behind those weary eyes lay sharp focus and unspoken grief. For the past 7 days, she had returned to this very spot. Watching. Waiting. Her gaze never left the tall, matte black gates. Beyond those stood the home of Damien Hale, the man she believed held the answers to a question that had haunted her every waking moment. "Where is Isabelle?" A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You okay, sweetheart?" Elena turned slightly. An older woman carrying a basket of bananas was approaching her with cautious kindness in her eyes. "You've been standing here for a while now. Do you have somewhere to go? Do you need food?" Elena forced a smile. "I'm fine, ma'am, thank you." "Are you sure? You don't look okay. You're all skin and bones. Want some bananas? They're fresh." "No, really. I'm okay," Elena replied gently, lowering her gaze. I'm just passing through." The woman looked at her for a moment, then sighed. "If I were rich, I'd take you in, you know? The world's so cruel these days." "You already have a kind heart, ma'am," Elena said. "That's more than enough." The woman smiled, nodded, and eventually walked away. Once alone again, Elena exhaled through gritted teeth, her fists clenched tightly by her sides. Her heart was pounding, her mind racing. This wasn't just some place she'd chosen at random. She wasn't really a vagrant. She was a freelance photographer, known in local circles for her street portrait series. But she had dropped everything the day her younger sister Isabelle stopped answering her calls. Isabelle had been working as a housekeeper at Damien Hale's home for over 6 months. Everything had seemed fine until she vanished. No goodbye, no note, just silence. And now, Elena stood just yards away from the man who might hold the truth. She glanced once more at the gate, guarded by 2 security officers. No way to walk in freely. But Elena had learned something in the past week. Where there's routine, there's opportunity. Suddenly, the familiar rumble of a delivery truck filled the air. Elena's eyes lit up. There it is, the door to her mission. She waited, counted each step, then quietly followed the truck from a distance. When it paused at the gate and the guard stepped forward, she crept behind its tailgate, her heart thudding like war drums in her chest. She didn't come here to run. She came for answers, and she was ready to find them. The moment the delivery truck eased past the gate, Elena clung to its shadow like instinct. She crouched low behind it, careful not to make a sound. The guards exchanged a few words with the driver, lifted the barrier, and waved him through. As the vehicle rolled into the pristine street lined with luxury homes, Elena slipped in behind it, keeping her hood up, her breath shallow. She was inside. The truck turned left. Elena didn't follow. Instead, she moved quickly down the sidewalk, her eyes fixed ahead on house No. 8. The one with the tall white walls, smart security cameras, and the man she believed could answer everything. Damien Hale's house. It was massive, modern, and intimidating, the kind of place that didn't just say money, it screamed untouchable. She stopped across the street, staying in the shadows of a tall palm. Her heart thudded as she watched for movement. Nothing. She checked the side gate. It had a sleek keypad, but she noticed something. The latch looked slightly misaligned, as if it hadn't clicked all the way. She stepped closer and gave it a gentle tug. Click. Her pulse spiked. Unlocked. Elena slipped inside, closed the gate behind her, and ducked behind a row of decorative shrubs. She waited. Still nothing. The back patio doors had floor-to-ceiling glass panes. Expensive. Impressive. And tonight, unlocked. Her fingers trembled as she slid the door open just enough to slip in. The moment she crossed the threshold, a wave of cold air greeted her. The house smelled like cedar and linen, clean, elegant, but strangely lifeless. "Isabelle?" she whispered. No answer. She took a step forward, her sneakers making no sound on the polished wood floors. She passed the sleek white couch, a wall-mounted bookshelf, a floor-to-ceiling painting of an abstract sunset. Everything was perfectly curated, but there was no sign of anyone. She reached the hallway. "Isabelle!" she called again, her voice barely above a whisper. Still nothing. Her chest tightened. Where would she be if she were hiding something? Elena walked past a closed door and gently turned the knob. A study. Another door. Laundry room. Then the kitchen. Marble countertops, gleaming appliances. Spotless, no food, no clutter, just perfection. Too perfect. She stood still, trying to feel something. An energy. A trace of her sister. But all she got was silence. Her mind raced with questions. Had Isabelle ever even lived here? Had she been taken somewhere else? Or worse? A sudden sound froze her. The soft, rhythmic clicks of shoes on tile, footsteps, panic, surged through her. Before she could react, a tall figure appeared at the hallway's end. Lean, dressed in black slacks and a navy shirt with sleeves rolled up. Damien Hale. His gaze met hers. For a long second, neither of them moved. Then, instead of shouting or grabbing his phone, he tilted his head and said calmly, "Are you hungry?" Elena froze. Her instincts screamed to run, to vanish before he could ask a single question. But Damien Hale didn't lunge for his phone. He didn't shout. Instead, he stood quietly at the end of the hallway, eyes dim, expression unreadable. "I asked if you were hungry," he said again, voice calm, as if talking to a familiar guest, not a trespasser. Elena swallowed hard. Her throat was dry. I didn't mean to intrude. I was just looking for shelter," he offered gently. "Somewhere warm?" She didn't respond. Damian took a slow step forward, stopping just a few feet away from her. In this light, he looked nothing like the polished man in the news articles, the powerful CEO of Hale Architectural Group. He looked exhausted. "Relax," he said. "I'm not going to call security. You're not the first person to get inside." He paused, gaze drifting to the floor. "But I guess you are the first I'm letting stay." Elena blinked. "Stay?" Damian exhaled deeply, rubbing the back of his neck. "This house is too damn quiet. Ever since my mother passed last month, He stopped himself, voice faltering. It's been hard." Something shifted in Elena's chest. She expected arrogance, suspicion, maybe even anger. But what she saw was a man grieving, lonely, unraveling in silence. "I've been alone in this place for weeks," he continued. "Everyone keeps saying time will help, but what does time do in a house where the clocks don't even tick loud enough to distract you?" Elena's lips parted, but no words came out. "So, yeah," he added, his voice quieter now, "if you need a place for the night, you can stay." She stared at him. "You'd let a complete stranger sleep in your home?" Damian half smiled. "You already made it in. That says something." Then softer, "Besides, I don't think you're here to steal silverware." Elena's shoulders dropped, tension melting just a little. Still, she tried to keep her tone neutral. "You don't know who I am." "Neither do I," he replied. "Maybe that's the point." He walked past her, slowly, carefully, as if afraid any sudden move might shatter the moment. When he reached the staircase, he turned back. "There's a guest room upstairs, third door on the right. Clean sheets, private bathroom." She didn't answer, not yet. "I just don't want to eat alone tonight," he added quietly. "So if you change your mind, the kitchen's open." With that, he disappeared up the stairs. Elena stood rooted in place. She had planned for everything, sneaking in, gathering evidence, finding out what happened to her sister. But not this. Not a man grieving. Not a man who didn't even ask why she was there, just asked if she was hungry. Her plan was unraveling, and somehow, she didn't mind. Elena stood at the doorway of the guest room, still unsure if what had just happened was real. A man she didn't know. A man she had planned to suspect, even confront, had invited her to stay. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but out of something far more human, loneliness. She whispered to herself, this could be the chance, not only to rest, but to search, to uncover the truth behind Isabelle's disappearance. She stepped inside the room. It was warm, minimal, and quiet. A soft beige duvet covered the bed. A desk with a lamp stood by the window. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a cover, and she was going to use it. That night, she slept lightly, ears alert to every creak of the house. The next morning, Damian knocked softly on her door. "I'm heading to the mall," he said from the hallway. "Figured you might want some proper clothes." Elena hesitated. Her instincts told her not to trust so easily, but going with him would give her more access, more time, and more importantly, she needed to look like she belonged here if she wanted to move freely around the house without raising suspicion. She opened the door. "All right, just a few basics." Damian smiled. "Take your time, whatever you need." At the upscale department store, Elena walked behind Damian like a shadow, eyes cautiously scanning her surroundings. She kept her answers short when sales staff offered help, but Damian seemed at ease, paying little attention to their stares. "You don't have to buy everything," Elena said when he placed a cashmere sweater on the counter. "I know," he replied, handing over his card. "But I want to." She didn't ask why. And he didn't explain. Later that afternoon, back at the mansion, Damian showed her around more of the house. "If you ever need anything," he said, "just ask. You're safe here." Safe. The word echoed in her chest. Elena wanted to believe it. Part of her did, but there was always a wall inside her, one that wouldn't fall until she had answers. After dinner, Damian excused himself to work in his study. Elena, now in clean jeans and a soft cotton shirt, wandered the halls in silence. She moved quietly, memorizing the layout. Hallway to the left, stairs to the basement, 3 doors upstairs besides her room and Damian's. She tested the knobs. One was a linen closet, another a rarely used guest room, and the third locked. Why was it locked? She leaned in, listened. Nothing. Back downstairs, she walked past framed photos. Damian and a woman in her 60s. His mother, likely. Smiling, radiant. But no sign of any staff. No Isabelle. She entered the kitchen. Spotless. Organized. Too perfect. She checked the drawers, cabinets, even beneath the sink, cleaning supplies. But none that looked used recently. No old name tags. No leftover apron. Not a single item that would suggest someone like Isabelle had ever lived or worked there. Her throat tightened. Did Isabelle really disappear from here? Or had she left long before Elena started asking questions? Suddenly, footsteps. She turned sharply. Damian stood in the doorway, holding a glass of water. "Everything okay?" Elena masked her expression with a smile. "Just stretching my legs." He nodded, eyes lingering on her a second longer than necessary. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "I haven't felt normal in this house for weeks." Elena looked away. "Me too." It wasn't a lie, not entirely. She didn't know what was happening between them, but something had shifted, something dangerous. Not because she feared Damian, but because she feared herself, and how easily her walls were beginning to crack. That night, as she lay in bed again, Elena stared at the ceiling, her thoughts a whirlwind. She had come here to find her sister, to expose the man who might have been responsible. But now she found herself eating his food, wearing clothes he bought, sleeping under his roof. And worst of all, she hadn't found a single trace of Isabelle. No clues, no proof. Only more questions, and Damien Hale's voice echoing in her memory, "You're safe here." But was she? Or was she simply sinking deeper into something she couldn't escape? The wind howled like a wounded animal, lashing against the windows as rain beat down in relentless sheets. Inside the mansion, the lights flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Elena sat up in bed, heart thumping. A lightning bolt lit the hallway outside her room for a split second, revealing shadows that danced on the walls. The silence that followed was deafening. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped out into the corridor. She had only taken a few cautious steps when she heard a thud. A loud thud from downstairs, followed by the creak of the front door. She hurried down, barefoot against the cold marble floor. As she reached the entrance, the door swung open with a groan and Damian stumbled inside, soaking wet, his shirt clinging to his skin, his hair plastered to his forehead. He reeked of alcohol. "Damian," she gasped, rushing to him. He didn't answer, just stood there, breathing heavily, eyes vacant, lips slightly parted. "You're drenched. Are you insane? It's dangerous out there." She grabbed a towel from the side cabinet and began to pat his arms dry, but he didn't flinch. He didn't move. And then he started to cry. Not a quiet sob, not a silent tear. It was a raw, broken sound, the kind that came from years of pain buried too deep for too long. Elena froze. He dropped to his knees on the floor, covering his face with trembling hands, rainwater still dripping from his clothes. "I hate the dark," he whispered. She knelt beside him. "Damian, I hate storms," he choked. "I hate nights like this." Elena placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "My father," his voice cracked. "He used to wait until the lights went out. That's when he'd start. He thought no one could see in the dark, but I heard everything. I heard my mother cry. I heard her beg, and I did nothing." His breath hitched. "I was just a boy. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I just hid." Elena felt her throat close. She had expected guardedness, maybe even secrets, but not this kind of vulnerability. She moved closer, wrapping her arms around him from behind. He didn't resist. He leaned into her like a child desperate for comfort, shivering against her warmth. "You were a kid," she whispered. "That was never your fault." "But it feels like it was," he muttered. "Every time the power goes out, it feels like I'm back there, like I'm watching her suffer all over again." "You're not there anymore, Damian," she said gently, her lips close to his ear. "You're here, and you're not alone." They stayed like that for a long time. Two broken people pressed together in the quiet of a storm, surrounded by nothing but darkness and memory. At some point, he lifted his head slightly, resting it against her shoulder. "Thank you," he said, hoarsely, "for not running away." "I came here to find someone," Elena replied, barely above a whisper. "But I didn't expect to find this." She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. They both understood. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt safe. And in that fragile space between grief and comfort, something shifted. Something unspoken, but unmistakably real. Morning light streamed through the tall windows of the living room, golden and calm, a stark contrast to the chaos of the night before. Elena sat curled on the corner of the couch, wearing one of Damian's oversized sweatshirts. The storm had passed, but its aftertaste still lingered in the air, heavy with emotion. Damian was still asleep upstairs, exhausted, vulnerable, human. And for the first time since stepping into this house, Elena didn't feel like an intruder. She felt responsible for being here, for being close, for getting too close. A sharp knock at the front door shattered the stillness. Elena stood slowly, her stomach tightening. It was too early for deliveries, too deliberate to be coincidence. Another knock, louder this time. She opened the door cautiously and froze. Her mother was standing there, and beside her, wide-eyed, looking thinner, but very much alive, was Isabelle. Behind them were two police officers, watching silently. Elena's heart dropped to her knees. "Isabelle," she whispered, barely believing her own voice. Her sister gave her a sheepish half-smile. "Hi, sis." "What? How?" "She's alive," Mrs. Cruz cut in, her tone clipped with tension. "And she has something to say." Elena stepped back as they entered. Damian, still half asleep, emerged at the top of the stairs. He blinked at the unexpected guests, his expression turning cautious. "I didn't do anything," he said quickly, hands slightly raised. "We know," one officer said calmly. "We're not here for you, Mr. Hale." Elena turned to her sister, arms crossed over her chest. "Talk." Isabelle's smile faded. She looked down. "I ran away," she admitted. "I didn't tell anyone. I know it was stupid." Elena's voice cracked. "You vanished, Isabelle. We thought something terrible happened. I thought... She hesitated, eyes flicking toward Damian. "I thought someone hurt you." "No one hurt me," Isabelle said quickly. I was in love. I left with him. I thought he'd take care of me, but he didn't. He lied. And when things went south, I didn't know how to come back." Mrs. Cruz shook her head. "You should have called. You should have said something, Isa. I was ashamed." Elena took a breath, trying to contain the storm brewing inside her. "Do you even understand what you've done? I broke into someone's house. I've been living here lying because I thought this man..." She looked at Damian, who stood silently behind the couch, guarded but not angry. "Was involved in your disappearance." Isabelle's eyes widened. "You what?" "I thought you were dead, Isa," Elena snapped. "Or kidnapped, or worse. And he was the only one who saw you last." Damian finally spoke. "I barely even knew her. She worked here a few weeks. Said she had to leave for family reasons. She didn't seem afraid." Elena's chest tightened with shame. She had spent weeks building a fortress of doubt, brick by brick, around a man who had only ever met her with grace. Now those walls were collapsing under the weight of the truth. Isabelle turned to Damian. "I'm sorry for the trouble I caused you." Damian gave her a polite nod. "I'm just glad you're okay." Mrs. Cruz glanced between her daughters. "We'll talk more at home." "No," Elena said, voice quieter now. "I need a minute." The others stepped outside, giving her space. She looked at Damian. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," he said softly. "I doubted you. From the moment I stepped into this house, I thought you were hiding something. And all this time, it was me." Damian offered a gentle shrug. "You were scared. You were trying to protect someone you love. That doesn't make you the villain." "But it doesn't make me innocent either," she whispered. Silence settled between them. Finally, she added, "Thank you for not throwing me out." Damian smiled faintly. "I don't regret letting you in, Elena, not for a second." And in that moment, for the first time since her sister vanished, Elena Cruz felt peace and an aching pull toward the man she had once believed was a stranger. The afternoon sun filtered through the share curtains, casting golden lines across the hardwood floor. The house, moments ago filled with tension, now sat in a rare stillness, quiet but no longer heavy. Elena stood near the living room window, arms crossed, her thoughts spinning. Behind her, Damian leaned against the doorway, watching her in silence. "I need to tell you something," he said gently. She turned halfway, her expression cautious but open. "I knew," he began, voice calm. "I knew who you were before you ever said a word." Elena blinked. "You? What?" "I recognized you, Elena. The first day you stood outside the gate." He stepped forward, slowly. "Isabelle showed me your photo once. You were laughing, holding a camera. I remember it so clearly." Elena's breath caught. "I wasn't sure at first," Damian continued. "You looked different, worn out, guarded, but your eyes, they were the same, strong, determined." "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to scare you away, and honestly, I wanted to see who you really were, without explanations, without labels." He paused, then added, "And what I saw was someone who would walk through fire for the people she loves. Someone I didn't want to lose." Elena looked down, the emotion rising quickly in her chest. "I thought I was fooling you," she said quietly, that I had everything under control. Damian smiled. You weren't fooling me, you were just protecting your sister, and I respected that. There was a moment of silence between them, not awkward, but full. Then Damian reached into his pocket. Her eyes widened as he pulled out a small black box. I wasn't planning to do this now, he said with a nervous laugh, but after everything, I don't want to wait anymore. He stepped closer and lowered himself to one knee. Elena Cruz, he said, his voice trembling with sincerity. I don't care where you came from. I don't care how this started. You walked into my house, pretending to be someone else, but you ended up becoming the person I can't imagine living without. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold ring, simple and timeless. You've seen the worst of me. You've held me when I couldn't hold myself together. You've made this cold house feel like home again. He looked up into her eyes. Will you marry me? Tears brimmed in Elena's eyes, and for a moment all she could do was nod. Yes, she whispered, her voice cracking. Yes. Damian stood, sliding the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a tight embrace. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In the silence, hearts spoke louder than words ever could. And for the first time in a long, long while, Elena Cruz wasn't chasing after something lost. She had found something new, something hers. The days that followed unfolded slowly, like the first quiet moments after a storm. The proposal didn't change their pasts. It didn't erase the pain, but it created space for something new, something that belonged to just them. Elena stayed, not out of guilt or fear or obligation, but because for the first time in years, her heart whispered, "You're safe." Damian, true to his word, never once asked her to forget the past. Instead, he helped her build something new from it, something honest, something whole. Together, they began to stitch their separate wounds into one shared healing. And when the pregnancy test turned positive weeks later, Damian didn't hesitate. He cried, then laughed, then held her like the world had given him back something he thought he never deserved. Now, with a child growing inside her and a future wide open before them, Elena found herself drifting not toward an ending, but into a beginning more beautiful than she'd ever imagined. The sea stretched endlessly in every direction, kissed by the last light of the sun as it dipped slowly below the horizon. Shades of gold, pink, and burnt orange painted the sky, the kind of view that silenced everything inside you. On the deck of a private yacht, Elena Cruz stood barefoot, a light breeze brushing against her cheeks, her hand resting gently on the curve of her belly. 16 weeks. She smiled softly to herself. Behind her, strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her gently into warmth and safety. Damian, he pressed a kiss to her temple. You okay? I'm perfect, she whispered, almost too perfect. He tightened his hold. You deserve perfect. They stood there in silence, listening to the soft rhythm of the waves below, the distant call of seabirds, the quiet heartbeat of the moment. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. If someone had told me, back then, that I'd end up here, with you, carrying our child, I would have laughed. Damian chuckled. You did threaten to break into my wine cellar the first night. She laughed too, then went quiet. I came into your life searching for someone, searching for answers. I thought I was ready to hate you. I know, he said gently. But I found something I didn't expect, she continued. I found a man who was hurting, who had been alone too long, a man who still knew how to care, even for a stranger with no name. He turned her to face him, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. You weren't a stranger, Elena, not to me. She placed her hand over his heart. You healed something in me, something I didn't know was broken. He took her hand in his, lowered himself slightly so they stood forehead to forehead. I wasn't whole either, not until you walked in, uninvited and unforgettable. A quiet laugh escaped her lips. You really should lock your doors more often. I'm glad I didn't. They kissed, soft, certain, as the sky faded from orange to lavender and the stars began to peek through the veil of night. Elena looked out once more at the endless sea and whispered, almost to herself, "Thank you, universe, for bringing me to him." And in her heart she knew she had found more than answers. She had found home.